Hello, this is Lance from Lancer's Lizards, and I'm here today to talk about how to tame your dragon. This is part 2, cage aggression. So a very common thing I hear from people is, my animal is the sweetest, gentlest thing once I get it out of the cage. Now, cage aggression is very, very common. I'm sure a lot of people who don't have reptiles can understand this from experience with dogs. You have the gentlest, sweetest animal, and then you go knock on the door and it sounds like it's a hound from hell that wants to kill you. It's taken its home as its territory and it's defending it with its life. So this is what happens with many of your animals, and I do have to blame small cages as probably the #1 main culprit. So many breeders use these. If you've purchased an animal recently, it's most likely raised in something like this. So as you can see, this male has very, very little room. It's not surprising that would consider the entire area to be its own territory. Again, I know some people have great setups and great success. I personally don't like these because, 1, the animal can uncoil, and 2, I really, really like to spoil my animals. And this is most likely how it was brought up as well. Food in, food in, food in. So we've conditioned it that every time the door opens, it's food. So when you open it and stick your hand in, ouch, you get bit. Wonder why. So what I hear from a lot of people, oh, there's an easy way around that. Just take your animal out every time, go stick it in another tank, and only feed in that tank. So it gets conditioned to eat there and not here. Well, there's a much simpler way of doing it. This way, you don't need that second cage. Every time you go to interact with your animal, you open this up, you handle it, you stick your hands in, do whatever you need to do, then and only then feed it. Now something else, and this is very, very common in snakes, these animals are very, very sight-oriented. So if you have a hard time picking up your animal, one thing you can try is waving a hand. Safe striking distance, of course. Most snakes will fixate on your hand. Very slowly, you can bring your other hand in from the side or underneath. And quite often, if you're gentle enough, you can pick them up, and they won't even notice you're being picked up. They'll still have laser focus on your hand. I've talked about in my previous video how that if you have a top opening cage, it freaks them out a little bit thinking it's a predator. If they're already being aggressive towards their territory, this is going to amplify this even more. So side opening cages, they're a really good thing to have. One of my custom made side opening cages, made from an old dresser, to a much larger 5-foot tall one that I made for my cell phone when it was young and now is occupied by a basilisk. Again, side opening cages like this make it a lot easier to scoop up your animal from underneath and coming out the side instead of the top, as mentioned in my previous post. Now something else you need to consider when you're feeding your animals is that snakes, tegus, monitors, and a few other species, they hunt by smell. So even if you're going and opening up the cage first and interacting before you feed it, make absolutely sure you've washed your hands or you haven't handled the food with your hands. Because even sticking your hand in there, you're going to get what's called a stupid feeding accident. They're going to bite on thinking that you're the food, and you're going to feel stupid about not washing your hands. This is probably the most common reason for getting bit by a snake, is that people forgot to wash their hands. And finally, tying in with my last episode, if you want to curb aggression, make sure they're not peaked at stress in the first place. Having cages with lots of cover will help them feel secure and less threatened. Lots of plants and natural hides will help to establish this. Leaving these natural hides to be their area of security and limited to their only areas of aggression, thus creating the open areas for you to interact with them with far fewer issues. So again, to summarize, these are the best ways to deal with cage aggression. 1, have larger cages. This way they become less territorial and can serve the entire enclosure their hide. 2, always condition them not to think that food is there when you open the cage. 3, for anything that does hunt by smell, make sure you've washed your hands to avoid stupid feeding accidents. 4, use side opening enclosures as much as possible. And last but not least, keep them less stressed. So just like my last episode, if they have lots of room, if they feel secure, they're not going to be as aggressive or on high alert to begin with. This is Lance and Godzilla from Lancer's Lizards. Have a great day.